Good day and welcome to The Silence Speaks Volumes. I can't believe that we on episode 12 already, and it's been such an amazing journey, sharing stories and people's experiences. Tonight we're not looking at the medical side of things, we're not looking at the emotions, the touchy-feelies, although I suppose we are going to cover some of that, but we have in studio with us Chantal Petersen, who's an HR practitioner, and we're going to chat about the patient, especially if you're going on long-term treatment. What are the types of conversations you've got to have when with your employer, sorry, and also coming back to work, the types of conversations that we have. So Chantal, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Faisal.
So in starting, what qualifies you to offer us the advice that you're going to be sharing with us?
Faisal, maybe just to start off with, I think it's important that any employee that you're facing with a long-term treatment, that the openness, disclose, talk to your employer about it. And really look at the different avenues and options that are available. A lot of companies, if you are privileged enough to work for a company that has pension fund or a provident fund, it's to really look at that and see, what is the benefits. You have your temporary, your permanent disability, but also apart from that is also look at your personal situation as well. Did you make provision, for that? That's the other option. And then last but not the least is a lot of companies has wellness programs, and a lot of people tend to underestimate, the power of that wellness programs. They can really be of good help, and support during this difficult period that you are facing. So yeah.
Yes, so as you're saying, in terms of provident funds, there could be coverage for things like temp disability, as an example. The conversations that you have with your manager, be it your line manager, someone higher than him, or the HR department, how important is it to disclose fully? And I suppose the fear that people will be feeling is, am I going to lose my job? And from my experience in terms of speaking to people, they don't know, or they're too afraid to disclose too much about what it is they are facing.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I have dealt with a couple of cases like that. And I think the important thing is, as an employee, I think the person first needs to deal with it first, realizing, listen, this is my situation now. This is what I'm facing. And it's very difficult for you to keep it to yourself. It's very important, to reach out to your line manager, reach out to your HR department, and even if you have a clinic sister, for example, on site, those are the people that you really need to confide in. Because sometimes when these difficult conversations are taking place, it's sometimes difficult for you to do it on your own. But I mean, you can actually get the support of your clinic sister to come and sit with you when you have that discussion with HR and with your line manager. Because ultimately, how is your line manager really going to know how to support you?
Exactly.
You understand? How is he really going to know, listen, if this employee of mine is going to go on treatment for a couple of months, what do I need to put in place to ensure that, because it's a business, the business must still run, as normal. So what do I need to do and put in place? And he would only be able to know that once that crucial conversation has taken place and the employee has confided, in his manager, and you get the guidance from HR in terms of what now, where to now. So it's inevitable. Those kind of conversations will have to take place. I know it's sometimes difficult, but yeah, it just makes the process so much easier if that disclosure, self-disclosure is there from the beginning.
So a question that came up before to me in one of the conversations I had was, my manager doesn't like me. So, he's going to fire me. But let's set the record straight here, where, especially in your bigger companies, there's a process that needs to be followed.
There's a process.
Followed.
Yeah. No, most definitely.
Would you mind sharing some of that processes? Because it may not apply to, it doesn't apply to just one company. It is a standard that is set.
Look, when there is, when you have a fund, the pension fund or provident fund, of course the company will apply for temporary disability. They will look at the medical certificates and everything will then be submitted. You will then get feedback to say, okay, the person, this qualifies maybe for temporary disability. Some companies then evaluate the person's condition. They will ask for an assessment after 6 months or a year or so, and then decide whether they will continue with temporary disability or whether the person now, due to the fact and the feedback, from the reports, that it's maybe justified to put the person on permanent disability. So that is the process basically to follow. In terms of what is happening to the employee, what is happening to his position, a lot of companies will fill that position for the time being with a temp. It's not so easy just to, just get rid of an employee. The law is protecting employees as well. And a lot of company has a very solid and good structure in place and systems in place in terms of how to manage that whole process. So it's unfortunately there is a very strict process that needs to be followed. But I think first and foremost, the important thing is the fact that there is the fund, the temporary disability option. And of course, when the person comes back, and he goes back into the job, it is again that conversation that needs to take place. The line manager will also need to monitor, and there need to be that openness to say, listen, can I cope? Can I continue in this position at the same pace that I used to? And that openness, unfortunately, it needs to be there. And that conversation needs to take place to say, listen, yes, I'm still 100% the same person, when I, from the time I left to the time I came back, and I can go on 100%, or no, there is some, it's not so 100% now, and we need to look into that. So, and then there is a process then also to follow. Yeah.
So, if I can use my experience as sort of an example. So usually what happens in the case, especially if you're fortunate enough to have a medical aid, things happen quickly when you're diagnosed with cancer. And that pace is so quick. And it's a lot for the patient to take in and have to deal with. There's the pressures coming in from the family. Now there's more stuff in terms of my job. What do I do here with my job? I've got, in a week and a half's time, I'm going for surgery, and I've got all these things to set up and take care of. You mentioned wellness programs. You have a line manager, and there's HR. Is there support that the organizations, and we're referring to right now to your bigger companies, and I'd like to also, if we can look at the smaller companies that may not have a huge HR department or anything like that. What sort of support is there available for the patient to get all of this? Because remember, there's such a lot happening in such a small time. Is there anything, or what sort of advice would you offer?
Faisal, there is some companies, bigger companies especially, they have something like a special leave also that an employee can qualify for. You get your 30 days or your 36 days over a 3-year period leave, and if you've exhausted that leave, with the employee's permission, you can take your annual leave, but then also you can apply then for special leave, will be approved. Once it's approved, you will then also be covered then for a certain period as well, until your benefit, your temporary disability, of course, that start kicking in. So that is the support that the company can give from that side. And then other than that is just keep the employee. The employee wants to know, listen, how much money is going to be paid out to me? You know, how much money will I be covered for? What is going to be the net effect, you know? When I do qualify now for the temp disability, would it be able to cover everything, my medical expenses and during this period, because you don't really want to sit with that problem as well. And I think in terms of support, you know, that is where HR can really play a pivotal role. And getting that information available. Get a dummy pay slip, you know, show the employee, listen, is it a taxable amount? What is the percentage of your salary that you're going to get for the 6 months period, you know? From that amount, will your medical aid be covered? You know, will you still be a member of the pension fund or the provident fund? Will you be eligible for a bonus at the end of the day? The person can sit and know, and he can make his sums and doesn't have to worry about things like that. Also, in terms of medical aid, for example, if you know there's a contact person that you are dealing with, you know, as an HR department, liaise with that person. Tell them about the special situation that you currently have, and ask them for support, you know, and then give that information to the employee, just to make things a little bit more easier in the event that there's any challenges or whatever, that she knows she has a go-to person, or she has an HR that can quickly just link her up with that person, you know, to liaise with. I found that over the years very useful, you know, so yeah.
So we got about a minute and a half before we need to pay the bills. I think it's also important for people working in the smaller companies, and I suppose to an extent the larger companies as well, to understand that your role with your not being there may mean that there is a possibility it needs to be refilled. But you did also mention that it's usually done with a temp.
At the most companies does that, yeah.
But is there the possibility, and I may be putting you on the spot here, but that person could lose their job?
We cannot exclude that possibility.
Okay.
But there's a thorough process that needs to be followed.
There is a process that needs to be followed.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll chat a little bit about that process and the conversations when coming back to work. Right now we have some bills to pay. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you shortly. Welcome back to The Silence Speaks Volumes, and this evening we chatting with Chantal, who's an HR practitioner, about discussions that we have as patients has to have with our employers. Chantal, during the break we were just chatting that Auntie Sophie, working at the corner superette, who's been paying unemployment, they may not have Provident Fund as an example. What options are there for them?
Well, the other option is also to go to the Department of Labour and with all your information and go speak to them, and there will also be that little benefit here. Because
I think everybody who gets a pay slip is paying UAF, which is the unemployment fund.
Yeah.
You also mentioned something interesting, and I'd like to share this with our viewers, is when you go onto a temp disability, it's around about 75% of your salary that you're getting, and you may go, but that's a lot less now than what I usually get, and I can't do without that. But you said something important there. It's non-taxable.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you could end up with a little bit more.
A little bit more.
So I've been through treatment, and I now got to get back to work. What are the sort of conversations I now have with my manager and with HR?
Okay. Typical conversation about my well-being. It's almost like a nice return to work interview with your manager, and say, listen, this is my situation, this is now the treatment that I'm undergoing. I need to go for follow-up checkups in the next 3 months. This is how long it's going to take. I'll probably have to take leave. Emotionally, this is the medication that I'm on, this is how it makes me feel. It does affect my concentration, etc. Or this is how it normally responds to it. Just have that consideration for me. Have that open discussion.
Open, frank
I
discussion.
think that's it. You know, from there, your line manager can then take it from there and say, "Listen, it's okay. You know, I can deal with that. I can accommodate this employee for this period." And of course, have that regular check-ins and check-ins. You know. And I think that is basically the discussion. I think openness and alignment between line manager and employee is the best thing, because if you know you have the support of your manager, you know, it will make your process so much easier. You wake up the one morning, for example, and you're not feeling 100%, you know, and you call and say, "Listen, this is how I feel," because your manager's already up to speed and know exactly, you know, what is the process, how you feel and how you react, and the process that you're going through. He will have more support, and there will maybe be a better understanding, you know. Of course, you know, scenarios and situations differ from each other, but in most cases, I've seen that just helps so much.
I can really relate to that, and even to a degree testify to that. When I returned to work after the surgery, "How are you doing?" is that I'm cool, I'm healed, I'm here, I'm ready to graft. And that was all I was willing to share. There was a sense of embarrassment, a bag, and I'm not going to speak to you about my crap that comes out into a bag here. And I'll never forget, it was about the third or fourth day back at work. Was in a meeting with the managers, and when the meeting was done, I got up and my bag got caught on the edge of the boardroom table and it pulled loose. And I felt that rip, and that was like, and I ran off and I went to the bathroom, and everything had leaked out and I messed all over my clothes. And I sat in that bathroom not knowing what to do. I sat there for an hour and I was in tears. What do I do here? And almost an hour later, I phoned up a colleague and I said, "Please just have a look at my desk. Bring my bag to the bathroom." He says, "What's wrong?" Nothing. And I think I was rude and not realizing it, but I just didn't know how to deal with that situation. I had to sneak out from work. I changed my bag and I snuck out of work and I ran off. And it took me a while of getting used to the bags to deal with these leaks. And eventually it's, you know, they called me into the office, "You keep disappearing. What's happening over here?" And it was only then that I opened up and had the conversation with him. And I was sort of backed into a corner. And explaining what is happening and how is that. All of a sudden, I had a lot more support from work. My anxiety levels dropped in terms of having that. So speak to your managers. And I suppose there's also the instance that some managers and employees don't have the greatest of relationships. So you can go past that, like to an HR department.
And you can get your HR to speak to the manager.
To the manager,
you know.
yeah.
But don't underestimate that. Sometimes even, you know, relationships, that it brings about a change in that relationship as well, you know. But it's unfortunately, it's one of, I mean, if you look at your case, if you just had to confide, you know, from the beginning, in your line manager, things could have been so much different. Because now you're coming back with the stress already, you know, the change, you have to get used to the change. And now you're sitting with all of that, you know, and it's strain on you as well, you know.
Oh yeah.
But by just confiding in someone, in your line manager, and really being open and honest, you know, could have just helped you so much through that process, you know. I think a lot of people underestimate this whole thing of return to work interviews, that it's actually so crucial also, you know, because that's when you have the opportunity to really start to talk to your manager and tell them exactly, you know, what happened and what is the situation, and give a little bit more, you know, detail. And that little bit of detail is the one thing that will at the end of the day actually count in your favor.
Yeah.
So, Yeah.
Speak and open up.
Speak and open
I
up.
think it's again, and we're looking at the role of the company here, and I think it's important for our viewers to realize that as much as you've got to have those conversations with your family and your friends, it has to happen with work.
Yeah.
And that fear, there's the stigma, and I know we've spoken about this before, but I can't reiterate the importance of being open and honest with the employer. They are not there to, oh, okay, I'm not going to deal with this, you're fired.
Yeah. That's so true.
There's again, there's a process. Even if it's a case of, I find that during these conversations and our regular check-ins, my position is too stressful, it's too draining, I can't handle it. Physically, I can't handle it. There's an obligation from the company almost to accommodate you perhaps in another role.
Look, that is the process that I'm talking about. You know, it's really to go and have and look and see, is there an alternative position available that we can accommodate you? If there is no alternative position, you know, then it is that conversation that needs to take place between employee and employer to say, but sorry, we can't accommodate you. And this is the reasons, you know. And that is the reality then that you'll have to face. So...
And again, it's...
And sorry Faisal, sometimes
no, it's fine.
Some companies are in the lucky position that they can accommodate employees, and they will really try their utmost best to see how they can. But other companies, some companies you find that there is just no other way, you know, to accommodate. Maybe due to lack of skills that the person has, or, you know, in terms of budget, there is just not, another open position available.
Yeah.
So.
And I suppose it's important that we need to be realistic about the situation that we find ourselves in, and to withhold things from the company could lead to a disciplinary process, which could in turn lead to termination, which then in turn impacts or hinders your ability to find employment elsewhere. So having those conversations up front, again, with to the viewers out there, it's extremely important, and it's difficult enough as it is that we have so many emotions going on, especially when you've just been diagnosed. Speaking and being open about it, I think it also forms part of healing.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think one of the things that a lot of leaders also neglect to do is the fact that we also face, sometimes, you know, you face challenges and crises and stuff in your own personal life.
Yeah.
And do we get the help as well? You don't get the help and you are faced with a situation where you as a manager need to be strong and you need to guide. And due to the fact that you've never really got help, you know, because you're always a strong person helping others, you know, that moment when you are confronted with something in the workplace, you might crack. So my call out there, my request out there to everybody is, as a leader, yes, we need to be strong and also need to be strong, but we are only human, and we also need to go and make sure, you know, that we also get the support and that we also get that help.
And I suppose the same sort of support structures that there are for what we were discussing here, the patient, is available to the manager in the employee wellness programs and HR.
Yes, yes.
Chantal, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really valuable, and I'm sure that our viewers out there has benefited from what we've been sharing. So thank you so much, and hopefully we see you again soon.
Thank you, Faisal.
To our viewers, as a patient, yes, there's a lot that is going on in your mind. The long-term illness, if it's something as bad as the dreaded cancer, it's still a conversation that needs to happen. where we need to process it. And part of speaking, part of opening up and being honest about what we are going through become very therapeutic to us. Don't create, and I'm using my own experiences here, don't create unnecessary stresses on yourself by holding onto this, like, you hear it all the time growing up. You don't share these things. You don't share your personal details. No, it's not. It's very important, especially when it comes to your employment. You don't want the stress, or you don't want to find yourself in a situation where it leads to a termination and you find out afterwards that if only I'd just spoken. Don't live with that regret. Open up and speak. As you heard, there's a process that needs to be followed. You're not just going to lose your job. Companies these days are very supportive to people going through this. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you found this useful, and we look forward to seeing you next week.